Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Hope you're doing well. 2025 has only just begun, and we're doing pretty well with our resolution to play as many different games as possible. What with Gears of War and Salt of Sacrifice's DLC. Yes, that last one counts, it's new content, shut up. But today, we're diving into something that we've definitely never played before, and there's a chance a good number of you haven't either. Ashen. So what is Ashen? Well, it's a Souls-like game from 2018 with a very unique art style. And unlike Dark Souls, this game was less focused on being dark and gritty, and instead focused on creating a cooperative Souls-like experience for its players. What does that mean? You'll see in a minute. But all you need to know is that today, we're gonna find out. Can you beat Ashen with only consumables? Now then, before we dive into the rules, let's do a brief summary of the lore. See that bird? That bird is called the Ashen, and is responsible for all the light in the world. Don't question it, it just is. At some point in the history of the world though, the Ashen began to die, and its last 3 breaths became the 3 golden ages of light. The first age brought creatures that feasted on the light, the Elderdark. The second brought the listener matriarchs, titans who worshipped the light instead of feasted on it. And the last breath brought the age of man, who grew and thrived in the light, but fell into despair when the light faded and destroyed itself with famine, pestilence, and war. However, rumor has it that the Ashen is about to be reborn, and the age of darkness that man has been living in for so long is about to end. Which sounds nice, but let's be honest, we both know the age of light is a myth. Well shoot, I guess I'm out $10. Right then, welcome to Ashen. If you've played any Souls game before, then you already know most of the buttons. You've got your dodge rolls, light attacks, heavy attacks, sprinting, all that jazz. There's even jumping and climbing for all of you weirdos who don't like to be told you can't go somewhere because of a waist-high wall. We'll get into the finer details in a minute, but first things first, we need to get to the Ashen.
Not safe, never safe.
So, you sound like you're doing well. Anyway, let's talk about today's challenge run. Would you shut up? I'm trying to talk over here. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, I was trying to explain how the equipment of this game works. As with most Souls-likes, you've got several weapon types you can equip to help you on your journey. There are actually only 4 different types though. Axes, clubs, two-handed axes, and two-handed clubs. And that's it. As for the difference between axes and clubs, it's rather simple. Axes are faster, have a critical hit chance, and do less base damage, while clubs are slower, have a chance to stun, and do more base damage. Their two-handed variants have the same characteristics, albeit with a higher damage and slower attack speed across the board. And outside of weapons having slightly different movesets from one another, that's about it. Naturally, that lack of weapon variety was what turned me away from Ashen initially. I'm a man who treasures build variety, so to hear it distilled to such simple formulas was a bit disheartening. But there's one more damage type we haven't talked about yet. Consumables. So this is the outdoors I've heard so much about, huh? I hate it. It's too bright out here. Put me back in the cave! So remember when I mentioned that the game was focused on being a cooperative Souls-like experience? Well, that's because it is. In an ideal world, you can play through the entire game cooperatively with a friend. Just create a password, press a few buttons, and yo kel's your uncle. But if you're like me and all of your friends have recently reinforced their doors with steel plating, the game gives you an AI companion instead. It's not great, but that's okay, because we've got the solution to that problem and the whole reason I came back to this game in the first place. Behold, the hidden 5th damage type, throwing spears. Unlike the other weapons in the game, throwing spears are a strange combination of practical and impractical. They don't go in a weapon slot like normal weapons, can't be upgraded with materials, and are consumed when thrown. However, you can still stab enemies with them, as one would expect, but it's literally the worst. The damage is low, the speed is abysmal, and you can't use a shield when holding a spear, so you're completely defenseless. They also have no heavy attack, charged attack, or moveset differences of any kind. The only attacks you've got are a light stab, a running spin attack, and your ranged throwing attack. But don't get too excited. The spin attack does the same amount of damage as the light stab, and both the spinning attack and the throwing attack remove your lock-on for some reason. So before anyone starts yelling at me about not locking onto enemies while throwing spears, know that I was yelling at the game just as loudly about the exact same thing. So here we are, our primary method of damage. Doesn't look like much at the moment, does it? Well, don't write it off just yet, because spears, when used properly, actually have some of the best damage in the game. See that? One spear, more than half of that enemy's health bar. That's like 3 light attacks rolled into one. If the wiki is to be believed, the starting axe of the game does 30 to 36 damage. A bone spear does 30 to 94. That's quite the difference. Granted, the first weapon jumps up to 55 to 66 damage after a single upgrade, attacks faster than you could ever hope to throw, and doesn't get consumed when used, but we gotta take what we can get. Besides, can your axe do this? 10 out of 10 weapon, no notes. But now that you know what we're up against, let's talk about the first brick wall. We can't make more spears. Oh sure, we can find a few lying around, but we've got no way to craft them ourselves. But don't worry, where there's a will, there's a way, and I have a way. Questing! Our boy Bataran here wants me to find his hammer, which was stolen by the local riffraff. Assuming we can get it back for him, all sorts of new mechanics will open up. And after a little bit of aimless running around, it looks like we found said raffriff. My, what a big hammer you have. It'd be a real shame if someone were to gang up on you and take it for themselves, huh? And after a slow and steady battle, Yokel steals my kill and Bataran's hammer is retrieved. To celebrate, I do a little exploring and accidentally find an ashen feather, which increases my health bar. Or at least, I think it does. There's no menu screen that gives your health bar a numerical value, so I have no idea if +2 is a lot or not. It's definitely 2 more than it was before, but yeah, no idea if I should be excited or not. Anywho, I give Bataran back his hammer, and with said hammer, he unlocks the ability for me to rest at checkpoints, as well as founds our headquarters for the rest of the game, Vagrant's Rest. Now, whenever we meet a friendly NPC, they'll join our little town, bringing with them some quests, additional NPCs, and a new building or two each time. Alright, Yokel, what do you got for me?
Do you dream? In my sleep, I hear my brother's voice. He once traveled this way with my father.
You know, that voice actually goes really well with your mustache. Jokel here wants me to help him figure out the meaning behind some spooky dreams he keeps having. I guess he keeps seeing a particular ruin in his dreams, and needs my help to get there. And who am I to deny such a mustache? Time for adventure! Oh, wait, we're here. Well, that was easy. But hey, new mechanics time. Cooperative climbing. See some loot that's a bit too high for you to reach? Just ask your partner to give you a boost. And just like that, we've got a new lockbox. But more on that later. For now, we've got Bataran asking us to explore a dungeon. He'll give us a lamp for our troubles, but warns us that there's something dark and dangerous inside. My dude, you had me at free lamp. With our powers combined, Yokel and I open the door to the dungeon, explore its dark, dank halls, and find some new friends along the way. Go get him, Yokel. I'll just be over here running away. Ah, Yokel! Yokel, you absolute jokel, assist me! A mysterious shadow lady shows me that pointing my lantern at these weird square holes in the wall will make them explode, which I'm sure won't come up at all in the very near future. Then I fall down a hole and into the arena of the first boss of the game, Ukoto, a member of the Elderdark. Ukoto is very quick and can leap around the arena at a moment's notice. And it doesn't help that every time he does it, he takes a swipe at you, taking out half of my health bar with a single attack. Thankfully, he doesn't have too many moves, maybe 5 or 6 at the most, but all of his attacks hit hard, and more importantly, we're running into one of the main complaints players had against the game. The bosses are spongy. Don't get me wrong, this fight would be going much faster if I were playing normally. I'm not throwing my spears because I have no way to get more, and as we mentioned earlier, my melee attack is essentially the worst melee attack in the game. But even when I was playing normally, as shown by my test character, you can see that this boss is gonna take some time. And this is the first boss in the game. Why is it like this? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The game is actually kinda short, and there's only 5 bosses in the entire game. 6 if you count the DLC. God damn it, Jokel. In what I have to assume was an effort to pad out the game time a bit, it seems the devs decided to beef up all the boss health bars. Which is a shame, because it makes every boss feel like a slog rather than an epic fight. Then again, it might not feel nearly as rough if you had a friend by your side instead of a mindless AI. So it's hard to say for certain. But after 5 minutes of slow stabs and the occasional throw, Ukoto dies in a burst of light. 1 down, 4 more to go. And after scooching past a whole bunch of spider exoskeletons, we make our way to the bottom of the cave where... So we just go back the way we came, or... I find Amara, who seems suspiciously undisturbed by the giant whatever that was just now, and she introduces me to Geffen, the Lady of the Birthing Waters. Amazing chest ahead? Geffen here explains that the remaining Elderdark beings will do their best to re-kill the Ashen, so it's up to me to seek out something called the Heart of Lethyrus, which lets you commune with the Ashen itself. And to help us with this task, Ladyperson here will join our town. Welcome to the club, Amara. I should warn you, we don't have a lake, so you'll probably have to commute. But we do have a Jokel, so, you know, there's that. Wait, is Geffen a mermaid? Back to Vagrant's Rest, where things appear to be picking up a bit. Jokel, is this your place? Looking good, my guy. I mean, it still needs a roof, bathroom, and a 4th wall, but I see the vision. We now have a few unnamed villagers around the place who will sell you goodies, such as white sapotes and craven remnants. This inventory will expand over time too, as we push forward in the other quest lines. Very good stuff. Anywho, back to Yokel's quest. I give him the box we found, and he tells me about what was inside it. A healing gourd, aka an Estus flask, and a map that points us to our next destination. Cool beans, can't wait. Yokel also mentions that his crafting table can be used to improve the gourd and make it so that it can hold more swigs. Good to know. Meanwhile, on Bataran's side of things, we just unlocked weapon upgrades, as well as gained a permanent stamina boost and a new talisman, Balance. The ability to upgrade weapons is meaningless to me, since you can't actually upgrade spears like you can weapons, but talismans are a completely different story. See this cross here? This is where relics and talisman are equipped. Think of them as passive boosts that let you create a build that fits your playstyle. Right now, we only have 2. Balance, which gives us a stun boost if we have a lantern out, and Amity, which gives us increasing damage resistance over time so long as we have a companion nearby. Neither of those really fit the build I want to make, so I won't bother spending money on them, but we'll get more as we complete more quests, so it'll come up again soon enough. As for the center, that's where your relic goes. Unlike the talisman, you can only select one, but these are usually pretty powerful and expensive. We'll come back to this later as well, once we can actually afford one. I give Amara some glue I accidentally found earlier while exploring, a little bit of sequence breaking there on my part. Then find Vorsa, another NPC hanging out in the wilderness. She's a hunter of sorts, and has been studying the local wildlife around the area in an attempt to study something called light sickness. Apparently, a good number of people and animals in the area are infected by it, including Bataran, and Vorsa here wants to find a cure. Well, considering everyone is asking me to explore the new area, I guess we better get going. Down to the Eye of the Needle, home of slightly angrier bandits and vicious dogs. Bigger enemies means bigger rewards though, so it's not all bad news. And we're starting to find loot that I actually care about too. Spearheads, a crafting material that we're going to need in large quantities very shortly. While looking for the next steps in my quest, I wandered off into a cave, which turned out to be a very big mistake, then found a new NPC, Isla.
Watch it there, vagrant. I've got a barrel and I'm not afraid to use it.
Oh, I like you. I like you a lot. Isla wants me to go find a rod and stone. Yeah, sure, I'll get right on that. But first, I'ma go hunting. Okay, wait, I think I'm doing this wrong. I kill a few wolves in the area, which is the actual animal Vorsa wanted me to kill, find Yokel's father, who's definitely seen better days, then return to Vagrant's Rest and turn in all my quests to get a few more talismans and recipes. We've got Lesser Vigor, which gives me 2% more HP, Drifter, which gives me up to 25 more health as I walk farther and farther from home, Lesser Constitution, which increases my stamina bar by 2%, and, the most important change of all, spear crafting. And wouldn't you know it, it's super inexpensive. We can craft 9 whole spears for 200 scoria, aka monies. Finally, I can use my spears like I'm supposed to. Geffen be praised. Except there's one tiny problem. The hitboxes for these things suck. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a skill issue on my part, but I just can't for the life of me get these damn things to hit consistently. You would think it would be easy, right? Just aim and throw. But the enemy hitboxes are so tight and the spear hitbox is so small that I'm just missing 90% of the time. You'll see what I mean later. For now, let's just talk to Yokel here. His entire family has some sort of blood curse that was never really explained to him, hence why his dead relatives keep haunting his dreams. Not gonna lie, my dude, that sounds like an issue, not an ish-me. But I'll see what I can do. I mean, he did just give me my first useful talisman, Second Wind, which makes sprinting cost 50% less. So we do owe him to at least investigate. But with a new batch of quests from my NPCs, it's time for the next area, Cinder's View, an ashy wasteland of bad times and beautiful overlooks. It's here that the game decides that we're playing Helldivers 2, and I have to run around the map playing keep away while throwing all of my spears, but eventually, I fell one of the big beasties and complete Vorsa's quest. So remember me complaining about the spear hitboxes? Maybe this will help give a better example of what I mean. See that? That's how accurate these hitboxes are. And I can't explain why this feels so bad, but it does. You'd think that it being so accurate would be a good thing. The spear goes where it says it does, and either it hits a body part or it doesn't. But something about this just feels particularly bad when you miss. Again, feel free to call it a skill issue, because it absolutely is, but when you've got 6 enemies barreling down on you and you miss because the hitboxes are so tight that your spear went right through one of their armpits, you start to miss the aim assist option. In any case, I found that stone Isla needed, turned in the giant spider quest reward to Vorsa so she could tell me what our next target is, then buy a very important new talisman that just unlocked, Rebound, which gives me a 30% chance to retrieve spears from dead enemies. We've also unlocked our next tier of spears, Prophet Standards. These spears have a much wider damage range, from 37 to 149, but they're also a bit more expensive, costing 750 scoria and a spearhead to craft. But that extra 50% damage potential is hard to ignore. I also decided to upgrade my gourd, giving me 5 swings, because why not? And after confirming that rebound was in fact working properly, I decided to stock up on money to get one more boost to our build, Ukoto's Guile, a relic that creates magic orbs with every successful attack that will deal bonus damage to your targets. It also comes with a fancy hat. In practice, essentially what's happening is every time I hit an enemy, I get a magical sphere above my head. Get another hit, and you get another sphere. And not only that, but every hit causes your spheres to home in on your target, doing additional damage. You can only get up to 5 spheres, and if you ever take damage, they all disappear and you have to start over. But considering we're a ranged build who stays out of melee combat as much as possible, this is fine. Granted, it's a little hard to see with my super awesome hat and magical balls sitting in the center of my screen, but it's a small price to pay. It's not like I was able to aim anyway. I find myself some new duds, which give me a slightly better defense at the cost of more stamina usage, immediately maxing out my fashion souls, then proceed to show off just how cool I look to everyone around me while offering Bone Spear party favors. The jealousy in the room is palpable. But with everyone dead and the rod and stone collected for Isla, I use said stone and rod to disperse an illusory wall and open up the next area of the game, the Whispers. Or rather, I would have, if it weren't for someone standing between me and the entrance. Hey, go away. Well, it was worth a shot. Say hello to boss number 2, Gararan. Aw, look, he's got a puppy. I want that. As far as the boss fight itself goes, it's not too bad. Gararan is a melee summoner of sorts. He can do big area of effects around him, which we obviously don't care about at all, summons large numbers of easy to kill skeletons, which I can just ignore and Yokel can deal with if he sees fit, and the damage we're dishing out, while not extreme, is at the very least consistent. I may or may not have made the mistake of not crafting more bone spears, so I kinda ran out of them a little more than halfway through the fight. But between my magic hat and these 9 Prophet Standard spears I have left, we should be okay. I mean, yeah, we now have to deal with Gararan's moveset, which means the likelihood of me keeping my magic spheres is a lot less now, and the attack damage is a lot smaller than even the bone spears was when I was throwing them, and I can barely get off 3 attacks before running out of stamina, but, no, wait, there's no but, this just sucks. I did throw a spear or 2 just to see how big of a difference it would make, and it's about what you'd expect. About 5 melee attacks to 1 throw. But with a little dodging and weaving and a few more throws, Gararan bites the ash. And the puppy is free of whatever vines Gararan was using to keep it restrained. Be free, my beautiful pupper. The scary man can't hurt you anymore. Oh, you're a sky puppy. Well, this just got a whole lot better. Because wouldn't you know it, Sky Puppy is actually a fast travel system and can warp us between certain checkpoints on the map. Thank God, walking back and forth was starting to get really tiring. So, with 2 bosses dead and flight now on the menu, it's time to check back in at HQ and get our next set of quests. I do a little grinding, then use my new wealth to restock on spears. However, we're done with bone spears. The NPC shops around town are now selling spearheads, which means crafting full stacks of Prophet Standards is now just a grind away. Vorsa and I go on another hunt, this time looking for a big wolf. And would you look at that? There he is, just across the way. Gosh, it'd be a real shame if someone just safely camped on this stone ledge across the river and killed him with throwing spears. That'd really take away some of the challenge of the game, huh? I help Isla find her grandmother, who naturally sends us on another quest to kill 3 traitors to their tribe, slowly navigate my way through some ruins, and find one of the most annoying enemy types for this run, shield enemies. There's only 2 ways to kill a shield enemy. Poke them until they run out of stamina, and then get a jab or 2 in, or distract them with your AI companion and throw a spear directly into their back. I'll be honest, for the longest time, I thought that these 2 methods were the only 2 options you had, whether you were playing the game normally or not. But it turns out that I'm actually just an idiot who never tried to use the shield's second action, a shield bash. It doesn't do any damage, but it knocks away enemy shields. Go figure. Naturally, this doesn't help me any, since I can't use a shield while holding a spear, but hey, good to know. With Force's hunt complete, we now have access to another spear type, Time-Worn Spears. These spears do a minimum of 90 damage and do up to 180 damage when thrown. A huge stat increase. Unfortunately, it doesn't come without a cost. They take 1,750 scoria to craft, and 3 spearheads as well. Considering spearheads are 1,500 scoria each, that's 6,250 scoria for a stack of 9, or 694 scoria per spear. Not exactly the kind of weapon that pays for itself. I also scooped up another talisman, Respite, which makes it so that my stamina recharges 10% faster. Not essential, just good to have. I find Sky Puppy's mother, who isn't happy that I imprinted with her child instead of her, then discover some crazy person hiding inside her nest and get a new relic. called Guardian's Pact. Oh, I also found one of the 3 guys that Isla is trying to hunt down. Such a shame that he's wildly allergic to spears being thrown at him from above. Hopefully his 2 brethren don't share the same weakness. We also found one of Jokel's relatives, or the shade of one of them anyway. Guess that blood curse is real after all. Wait a minute, Jokel, since when do you have wings? Apparently, the AI has access to everything you've unlocked in your game, whether you've actually used it or not. Which means Jokel Yokel here can use my Guardian's Pact, which just so happens to be a pair of sky puppy wings. As you can see here, it doesn't grant you the power of flight, but it does give you a 25% bonus scoria when you kill enemies. And if you reach a certain point in the game, the wings grow into their final form where they deal 30% of the damage you take back to your attackers. Thorns, if you will. Sounds fun, but what I really need is 2 new talisman. Swift, which makes my attacks cost 10% less stamina, and Last Stand, which grants me extraordinary damage boost the closer I am to death. Glass Cannon, away! I also unlocked Rampage, which makes it so that I get 10% more damage for 10 seconds after I kill an enemy, and it stacks up to 30%. Time for some napkin math. Time-Worn Spear does 180 damage when thrown. If we lower our health to less than 25%, we get an 80% damage boost, which would be an additional 144. And then, if we kill 3 enemies in a relatively short time span, we could get an additional 30%, aka another 54 damage on top of that. 180 plus 54 plus 154 equals 378 damage per thrown spear. That is more than 2 times the damage of a maxed out version of the Bone Hatchet. Well duh, Lemon, that's the first weapon in the game. And I hear ya, but actually, that's pretty high up there. Turns out, we're actually doing more damage than the highest one-handed weapon in the game does at +7 as well, the Bladed Club, which can do 254 damage per swing. Or, if you want to get really nitty-gritty, we are just shy of beating out the best two-handed weapon in the game, the Harkening Club, which maxes out at 386 damage at +7. Now, is this completely accurate? No, of course not. This is just me comparing our glass cannon to the base damage of maxed out weapons. Use the same glass cannon math on these weapons, and they'll be way stronger. But can you really afford to make a build like mine if you're within bonking range? And, more importantly, can you even get close to this amount of damage without endgame upgrade materials? No, you cannot. Which means stupid math and my terrible build decisions have once again helped us completely break a game. Oh hey Floker, nice beard my dude. You stay put, I'll help you out later. For now, it's time to get cracking on the next boss, the Listener Matriarch, Amarin. Before diving into that, I decided to remove my magic hat since the damage the magic spheres was doing doesn't really compare to getting 25% more money. And I really need more money right now. How else am I gonna pay for my game-breaking spear addiction? I let myself get smacked into danger zone health, then proceed to get to work clearing this dungeon. And it's right around here where the cracks in the game start to show. Up to this point, I've been having a really good time. The builds have been fun to mess around with, the world has been interesting to explore, and things have been going rather smoothly, all things considered. But all of a sudden, Ashen decides that it doesn't want to do that anymore, and we go from playing a Souls-like to playing a Demon Souls-like. What do I mean by that? Well, if you had to compare the level design of Demon Souls to the level design of any Dark Souls game, what difference immediately stands out like a sore thumb? That's right, the checkpoint system. In Dark Souls, the game gives you the occasional bonfire, a checkpoint to refill your Estus, get stronger, and return to when you inevitably die to a dog. Demon Souls, however, doesn't do that. A level in Demon Souls is one big level, start to finish. You start at a bonfire, you end at a boss. No checkpoints in between, which means you're either prepared when you enter the level, or you're not. There's no safety nets if things go wrong. If you lose your souls halfway through the level, you'll have to walk all the way back to get them, then decide if you press forward with even more souls on your back, or make the long walk of shame back to the bonfire. A walk that takes minutes upon minutes of careful traversal. Which doesn't sound too bad when you say it out loud, but keep in mind, you're probably not dying once. You're dying several times, and each time the run back feels longer, and longer, and longer, with each death getting you a little bit farther, while simultaneously making the walk back that much more annoying. To help you understand how sharp a tone shift this is for this game, I was able to easily find checkpoints in the overworld every few minutes. 5 minutes tops, and that's mostly because of the traversal time over large open plains. Here in the dungeon though, it took me 15 minutes to reach the point where I died, and we were only about halfway through the dungeon. This sucks. And the worst part is, I don't understand why. Was this the game's way of trying to pad out its runtime? Or did the devs think that this was a good way to challenge their players? Personally, I'm leaning towards option C, both, but if that's the case, this was absolutely not the way to do this, because it just feels misguided. Don't get me wrong, I see the intention. We've reached the halfway point in the game, so we gotta do something special. And a dungeon leading up to a boss is a great idea. But why did you remove the checkpoints? What part of a 30-minute slog through mountains of enemies sounded like a good time? Oh sure, there's vats of gourd goo sprinkled around to give you more healing as you go deeper and deeper, but that doesn't replace the time I lose when I get wombo comboed by a horde of enemies 18 minutes into the run. And don't you worry, it did occur to me that this might just be a challenge run problem. After all, every corner becomes a death trap when you're a ranged glass cannon, right? Well, yes and no. Because while I did feel slightly safer during combat, my DPS was actually much less. And playing normally does nothing to remove the runback problem either. So even when I was using a build that could take a hit, and taking advantage of every single pseudo checkpoint the game left for me, the actual traversal time wasn't any shorter, which meant my 30-minute slog was still a 30-minute slog, no matter how you cut it. I don't know, man. It's hard to explain. On paper, it sounds like a great idea. We're transitioning from part 1 to part 2 of the game, so give the player a new challenge. But in practice, ick. Big ick. Well, at least we only have to do this once. It's not like Ashen will pull this stunt again with much harder enemies and an even longer dungeon with no way to restock your supplies later in the game, but after more deaths and runbacks than I care to admit or remember, I finally find a checkpoint. What do you have to say for yourself, game?
Keep your mitts off me, Rock.
Well, fine then, shit. The best part? This isn't even a fast travel checkpoint. So if we're running low on spears, we're more than welcome to use a Craven Remnant to warp back to Vagrant's Rest, but you'll have to walk all the way back through the dungeon if you do. Well, that ain't fucking happening. Which means it's time to rush towards the end of the dungeon and face off against the third boss, the Listener Matriarch, Amarin. Amarin is a giantess who feels like she has about 5 moves to her name. She's got several stomp attacks, a few club swings she can do, a rush attack, and if she's feeling spicy, she can smack her giant lantern with her hammer and create an AoE combo, the last of which has way more reach than you expect. She also seems completely resistant to my throwing spears. I should be doing 180% of my normal damage. Why didn't her health bar move? Even melee attacks against her lantern don't seem to be doing anything to her health bar. What the heck is going on? Oh, wait, it was just a graphical glitch. Ooh, almost lost my cool there. When you fight her normally, the lantern itself has a health bar. Not sure why throwing spears don't make it show up, but we can prove that spears are doing damage because this animation here, where the lantern breaks, is the exact same animation that happens here with my spear. A win's a win. We'll take what we can get. With her lantern broken, it now leaks glow stick chemicals all over the floor, causing chip damage if you stand in it. But on a positive note, she now takes more damage from attacks. And if we just go with the flow and let the chip damage keep pushing me closer and closer to death, we can actually do some pretty significant damage. And with my gourds down to 0 and my damage through the roof, we go in for a final few swings and bring the giantess to her knees. That's 3 bosses down and 2 to go. And for our troubles, the nice lady who is trapped up on Amarin's throne comes to join our village. This is Silerin. She's actually the sister of the boss we just killed, and Bataran, if you can believe it. With her free, we now have half of that heart thing that Geffen wanted us to find, and we also have a new relic, Geffen's Blessing, which is exactly what we needed to take our glass cannon build to 11. See this? This is how we stay in the danger zone without being an anxious mess. Basically, the longer we don't get hit, the more damage resistance we accrue. If we aren't hit for 15 seconds, we gain 15% damage resistance to the next hit we take. Avoid damage for another 18 seconds, and it boosts to 40. Another 23 seconds, and you can fully 100% ignore the next hit you take. And in a single paragraph pitch, you can see the potential. Simply drop into the danger zone to maximize your damage, avoid further damage for 56 seconds, and no longer are you a glass cannon. You're a quartz cannon. That's a joke for all you Mohs hardness scale junkies out there. And after trivializing the mini-boss fight I'm supposed to do, killing most of them before they even get down the hill, we collect the Cunning Pestle, which unlocks 2 new abilities for us. The first is Fury, which is a talisman that gives me a 25 damage boost every time my companion dies, with a maximum of 50. Looks like Yokel the Jokel is going to be slipping off a lot more cliffs in the near future. And the second ability we now have is the ability to warp between these red statues we've been seeing all over the place. Cool stuff. Oh, that's Geffen's Blessing, by the way. Pay it no mind. So, teleportation. In order to make it work, you have to throw a spear at the statues. So, in the interest of not wasting all of my good spears, I bought an extra 99 bone spears. And there you go. Totally not creepy and off-putting at all. I warped my way across the Rocky Mountain Pass, help Floker find his tools, find an ancient tablet for Amara, return to Floker and collect my reward, the ability to buy brighter lamps, then go on a mission with Muscle Mommy to find a talent of some kind, during which I absolutely carry my own weight and definitely don't embarrass myself repeatedly. Nope, couldn't be me. Okay, it was me. But to be fair, I was very distracted by the fact that those enemies have exploding spears. Are those a thing? I want those. I do a bit of cooperative climbing with our lady friend here, which looks absolutely ridiculous with our size difference. Find that talon Siloren was looking for, then find another one of Yokel's ancestors. Each one we find gets us closer and closer to the source of the curse. Nearly there now. Helping Siloren with her quests unlocks potion crafting, which is an interesting trade-off system of sorts. Crafting potions is relatively cheap, especially considering NPCs in town sell all the ingredients you need. But the effects are two sides of a coin. For example, Leech Drought gives you a full heal, but if you try to use any other healing items in the next 30 seconds, you'll take damage instead. The only one that catches my eye is the Sturm Spirits potion, which gives you 50% more damage for 2 minutes. The downside is that you also take 25% more damage during that time as well, but my fancy new mycelium crown solves that problem, doesn't it? I make my way through Ashen's version of Blighttown, which is thankfully neither poisonous nor too long, fight my way through the Blighttown obligatory wooden rafters, get to our next target, and pick off every single one of his backup dancers from afar, killing him with embarrassing ease. Easy game for babies. And after a few more minutes of stomping through puddles, we finally arrived at the last area of the game, a crumbling city filled to the brim with enemies and good times. Can't wait. I do some last minute cleanup of any quests I had lingering around, which unlocks a bunch of other items and equipment that doesn't really help our build in any way, and with several bundles of time-worn spears in hand, it's time to make my way through the end game. If I'm being honest, it looks like the majority of the difficulty of this area was supposed to come from ambushes and overwhelming odds. But throwing spears at enemies from long distance kinda trivializes that. Combine that with the fact that we can regenerate a mulligan every minute, and pushing through the city doesn't take long at all. More importantly though, I was able to finish off another one of Vorsa's quests, which unlocks the Cracking Spear. The damage is weirdly not an upgrade like I would have expected. The max damage is slightly better, I guess, but the minimum damage is much worse. And it has no chance to critical hit? Why? Oh, that's why. Essentially what we've got here is a firebomb on a stick. If you hit your target, it explodes instantly, knocking the enemy down and dishing out that sweet AoE damage. And as a consolation prize, if you miss, the spear sparks for a second before exploding anyway, which probably deals out that minimum damage we saw earlier. They are a bit hard to aim due to the sparking tip of the spear filling up the entire aiming reticle, but for a throwable explosive, I'll make do. A little more city exploration and questing later, and we found the Mother Scale, which we can give to Vorsa for the final spear type unlock, which does a whopping 124 minimum damage and 250 damage maximum. Our best and most expensive spear by far. And a few minutes later, we discover a giant lake just past the city, where Geffen appears to be enjoying a late afternoon swim. Geffen here alerts us that the second half of the heart we need is nearby, in the Palace of Lathyrus. I know a boss battle when I hear it. But first, because I feel like I owe it to him for all of the name calling I've done this entire video, let's finish Yokel's questline. His last living relative is sitting there waiting for me, so naturally, I cheese the entire encounter. Fun fact, Cracking Spear AoEs work on shield enemies. The more you know. Yokel's relative is pretty chill about the whole thing though, and more or less welcomes death at this point. He tries to tell me a sad story, but I'm a man on the cusp of victory. We don't have time for that right now. Alright buddy, we're square now. Enjoy not having a blood curse or whatever. But with all my loose ends tied up, it's time for the final stretch, the palace. The enemies here give incredible amounts of scoria, so getting funds for any endgame materials and weapons is no longer a problem, which is great, because we've got a much bigger problem now. Remember how I ranted and raved about that dungeon a while back? Well, take all the points I made about that dungeon, then multiply them by at least 150%. Enemies are around every corner, they're all maxed out versions of the ones we've been fighting up to this point, there's no checkpoints to be found throughout the entire palace, so every single death results in another 30-minute slog. My AI companion can't even make it through the first hallway without dying like an idiot, and you can't even speedrun through the dungeon because there are choke points where these fucking things block the doors until you kill all the enemies in the room. This part of the game made me a very sour lemon, much to the enjoyment of everyone who was watching me attempt it live on the second channel. Shameless plug, shameless plug. And in the interest of not reliving that trauma, we're not gonna linger on it here. But yeah, this part sucks, and it actively made me want to stop playing, because this isn't fun hard. This is just hard for the sake of being hard, which, contrary to what every gatekeeping capital G gamer will tell you, isn't fun. Now, would this have been easier if I was using a different build? Yes. Would it have been easier if I was using actual weapons that didn't rely on my terrible aim? Also yes. And would it have been easier if the game had told me that upgrading my weapons directly affects the damage my AI companion can dish out, thus making them able to survive encounters more easily and help clear the rooms faster? Yeah, that would have been nice. But the game didn't do that. Probably because it assumed that the average player would, in fact, upgrade their weapons. And I didn't realize this mechanic was a thing until well after I cleared the dungeon. So yeah, upgrade a weapon to max level even if you aren't going to use it. Your AI companion will thank you. Anyway, skipping past literal hours of torment and anguish, I was finally able to bash my head through the brick wall and get to the end of the palace, the fourth boss, the Shadow of the Ashen. Interestingly, this is a 3v1 boss fight, which means this is either going to be a very easy fight, or we're in for a bad time. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's the bad time one. So not only does this boss have double swing attacks, which makes my 100% defense item completely useless, but he also summons enemies throughout the fight and does large AoE attacks. Definitely not an easy boss like I was hoping, that much is clear. But after crawling ever so slowly up the learning curve, I think we've finally got him on the ropes. Is what I would say if my man here didn't just snatch up my party member, summon the devil himself to the Discord call, and snap her in half like a twig. Oh good, did that little bit of murder buff you up? Fantastic, I hope that works out for you. This second phase is more of the first, just dialed up another notch. There's more summons, we're down a player, and his attacks do more damage. Presumably. I wouldn't know, I die in one hit no matter what. But with Yokel pulling aggro like a good tank, and my glass cannon build pushing damage limits, we're able to take him down with a few more throwing spears, then watch while the devil collects his due. Oh hey look, Amara's back. Pulled a Gandalf the Grey on us, huh? Naturally, our journey isn't quite done yet. We've got one more boss to go. I jump down a pit behind the throne room, you know, as you do, and end up in the realm of the Elder Dark, the Gnaw. Yeah, no, I'm not doing this again. The fun in this game ran out one dungeon ago. I activate my speedrun strats, running past literally every enemy I come across, and find Geffen here at the end of the world. Lady, I'm a married man. You gotta move on. Geffen combines the two halves of the heart I collected, and I'm given my final mission, go awaken the Ashen, who is actually all the way back at the cave near Vagrant's Rest. Huh, I like that detail actually. And say what you will, this game does know how to set up a view. I make my way to the ritual site, where Bataran and his sister are waiting for me, and Bataran performs the sacred rite that awakens the Ashen and asks it to choose a guardian for the remainder of this age. That is a big bird. Naturally, the Ashen chooses me as its protector, seeing as I'm the one who's been doing all the hard work around here, and the story comes to a close. Nope, just kidding. That's not at all what happens. Instead, Muscle Mommy betrays us, revealing that she's been possessed by Cisna, the greatest Elder Dark, this entire time. Something something dark sides, something something complete. And so begins the sloggiest boss battle that ever slogged. Not only does this boss constantly move and have a weirdly difficult hitbox to find due to her hair constantly obscuring her body, but she doesn't take very much damage either, costing me well over 100 of my best spears to get the job done. And when she inevitably killed Yokel my Jokel by pushing him into the pool, because of course she did, the fight very quickly deteriorated into me running around this giant pool in the middle of the arena and occasionally throwing a spear at her until she died. So, you know, basic Andariel strats. Very effective in practice, very boring to watch. And yes, for the sake of testing, I did throw a spear into the Ashen's eye. Yeah, no, nothing happens. I don't know what I was expecting. In any case, several stacks of spears later, and Cisna finally bites the dust. Or would have if she didn't decide to go Hyperdark mode and release the Kraken. Here's a fun idea. Despite this being the chunkiest boss in the game, let's give her a second phase with a complete health bar refill and an instant kill attack that ignores my 100% defense. That should make this final boss fight feel super epic. Oh, and to make sure players really appreciate how epic it is, let's make them walk all the way back to and through that cave every time they die, and then fight through the first phase all over again every single time. You know, really hammer home that epic nature of what they're doing. Yokel, do me a favor and end my suffering, would you? Thanks, pal. So I'm gonna be honest, I have zero interest in doing that. Like, any of it. At all. Don't get me wrong, I tried everything I could think of to make it work. I used potions to give myself an additional 50% damage boost, which may as well have been snake oil for all the good it did. I tried different builds that gave me more stamina and therefore cut down on the time it took to get to phase 2, and even thought I might have figured it out when Cisna didn't do her creepy crawly move so long as I stayed within relatively close range to her. But no, that was just cope. She does that attack no matter what. Hell, I even tried fighting her normally, just to make sure that all my sour feelings weren't stemming from the challenge run itself. But yeah, boss still sucks. You can reach phase 2 with your companion, wear tanky armor, and have a higher health bar, and she still just wombo combos you into oblivion. After a few more hours of attempts, I did the smartest thing I could think of. I quit. I walked over to the port in Vagrant's Rest, hopped inside a barrel, and let Isla push me down the river to whatever fate that Ashen sees fit. Yeah, that feels about right. For those of you who care, if I had the willpower to push through that second phase, the game ends literally right afterwards. Cisna crumples into a sad little pile, the Ashen lifts you up into the air to declare you its official champion, And Bataran waxes poetic about how he can die happy knowing that you're there to protect the new age of light. Yay. And for those of you who really care, there's also a DLC that came out, with a whole new area, new spear that's somehow worse than the one I was already using, and another boss to fight. But I think that's enough Ashen for one lifetime. And there you go. Can you beat Ashen with only consumables? Absolutely. But do I have the willpower to throw myself into that grinder again? No. No, I do not. It may seem a bit of a cop-out, quitting right at the end of the run, but I have to respect my sanity and my time. And while I'm a little upset that it took me all the way to the end of the game to realize I wasn't having fun anymore, it is what it is. The worst part? Ashen is a good game. Great even. But only if you play it the way it was meant to be played. And I'm not talking about using normal weapons and shields and such, although that does play a big part of it. I'm talking about co-op. This game, very clearly, was designed around being a two-player experience. And playing it any other way is just not very fun. So if you find yourself wanting to play this game, maybe just keep that in mind before taking the plunge. So there you go. Ashen with only consumables. Now let's never talk about this game again. Take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.